Welcome to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. This show unveils modern Desi parenting topics and explores the latest research for raising our bicultural children. Today, I want to talk about South Asian Americans and parental expectations, as well as perfectionism. So, first, why is it important to talk about expectations? Well, it's really important because this is what's going to help children grow and thrive and develop to their fullest potential. However, the way those expectations are conveyed to children and the way they get discussed within families, this can lead children to have very different emotional outcomes. So many South Asian American children feel like they're not going to be loved by their parents if they don't meet certain fixed expectations of them. In this way, children often attach their worth to that expectation. And so this can lead children to doing things in order to be that perfect child for their parents, in order to get that love from their parents. But when they do the things that their parents want, they do often get a lot of love. However, when they don't do those things, they may get treated with the silent treatment or passive aggressive comments. Now, the research by the American Psychological Association also shows that many children face something known as family discrepancy, which means that even when they meet those expectations, they still feel like they're not good enough, which then leads them to have more psychological distress. So, what does this all mean, and how can we set expectations that doesn't send our children these signals that they're not loved or that they're not good enough? How can we set realistic expectations for our children and then respond in ways that allow for them to achieve those goals in life? Basically, what we know is that how we communicate our expectations can lead to healthy ways of striving towards their goals. Or again, it can have those adverse effects of having them become a perfectionist, which again could lead them to having low levels of self-esteem, feeling really anxious, or feeling depressed. So, what is that difference? So, healthy striving is about setting these realistic expectations for ourselves and for others. We experience our errors as a natural part of life, and we keep striving to be a better version of ourselves. So we know we're going to make mistakes, and we grow based on our goals versus what others want for us. Perfectionism, on the other hand, is holding ourselves and others to a set of unrealistic and often unattainable standards. We believe we have to be worthy of living and being human, and we continuously achieve what we believe to be worthy enough. And our struggles are often seen as failures. So, why is this especially important for South Asian Americans? Well, in the US, they have been deemed that model minority stereotype, and many families want their children to live up to that expectation. They don't want them to talk about their struggles, they want them to look like they are perfect and that things just naturally come to them. And this is something that is deeply ingrained in the psyche of the immigrant parent because before 1965, there were quotas where they didn't want immigrants coming in, especially from Asian countries. But then what happened was in 1965, there was the Immigration and Nationality Act, which actually invited our parents to come in because they were these high achieving professionals. So they were welcomed in due to this need for more professionals in the workforce. And so really they were not welcomed in. They just had this need. And so it opened its doors to, and I'm going to quote here by Lyndon Johnson, those who can contribute most to this country, to its growth, to its strength, to its spirit. And so again, that's how that model minority stereotype really started coming to fruition, was looking at the ones that could contribute, the ones who are going to help make America strong. And so we don't like to talk about our struggles because we believe it will reflect poorly on our family's image in the eyes of others. And parents who have high expectations of themselves, especially those parents, they're going to have those high expectations of their children to continuously achieve, perform, and be the best at everything that they pursue. Research from the University of Massachusetts also found that there is an aspect of ethnicity that contributes to this development of perfectionism. A possible explanation is that the harsher parenting styles that have a focus on education and achievement can actually lead to a very fixed set of expectations for their children to follow a particular path. And so the American Psychological Association also notes this emphasis on humility can cause children to also feel like they're not good enough because they're not supposed to talk about their accomplishment. I often hear children saying no matter how much they accomplish, children still don't feel like their parents are proud of them because parents also don't talk about their children's accomplishments. Oftentimes, children try to please their parents and meet their expectations to gain their approval. They learn early on in life that love is conditional and it's based on trying their best to meet what their parents want for them and expect from them. Children who are consciously trying to meet their parents' expectations often do become people pleasers because they start to crave that external validation from others for that approval. And South Asian parents often want the community to approve of how they're raising their family and how their kids are doing in all aspects of life, whether it's school, marriage, parenting, and that list goes on. So, what happens when parents continuously push their expectations onto their children in this way? Well, some children overexcel. They deal with high amounts of pressure and stress. They're hard on themselves because they internalize it, and they have low levels of self esteem because they still don't feel good enough. And other children just stop trying. They deal with procrastination. They're also dealing with stress and anxiety and depression. So we definitely need healthier ways to communicate our expectations to our children. We want to help them set those realistic goals and to positively respond to our children when they do meet those goals. So let's pause for a break. And when we come back, we're going to meet our guest, Sanah, a licensed professional counselor, and talk to her more about how she became an advocate for South Asian American parents and this need to address perfectionism. Welcome back. We left off talking about why it's important to talk about South Asian Americans, parental expectations, and perfectionism. So let's go ahead and introduce our featured guests. Today we have Sanah, a licensed professional counselor and a dedicated mom to a baby girl. She navigates the unique dynamics of an interfaith marriage, bringing a broad perspective to her work. Specializing in supporting mothers, Sanah understands the challenges of burnout and overwhelm caused by people pleasing and perfectionism. Perfectionism in motherhood often shows up as setting unrealistically high standards, feeling like you must do everything perfectly, and struggling to delegate tasks. Sana's compassionate approach helps moms learn to manage their mental load, set healthy boundaries, and find balance in their lives. In her practice, Sana focuses on empowering mothers to communicate effectively with their partners and support systems. She provides tools and strategies for addressing perfectionistic tendencies and reducing stress. Sana's empathetic and personalized guidance ensures that her clients feel heard, understood, and supported. Through her work, she aims to help moms regain their confidence, prioritize self care, and navigate the complexities of motherhood with resilience and grace. I want to thank Sana for being here today to help us guide. Welcome back. You're listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. I'm so excited to bring Sana to you today, and she is going to help guide us through understanding parental expectations, healthy striving, and perfectionism. So before we get into that, I just wanted to talk to Sana a little bit more about her experiences growing up, and what parent-child relationships were like at home.
Yeah, hi. Thank you
Hi.
so much for having me on. It's
Yeah.
it's such a pleasure. Yeah, so a little bit about my childhood. So we immigrated, we as in my parents, my younger brother, we immigrated from India when I was around 6. We were
Mm.
actually supposed to end up in Canada, but the job situation didn't work out for my dad. So we ended up in Dallas because that's where a majority of our extended family was.
Mhm.
So I've grown up in Dallas my whole life until undergrad. School was a really, really big topic of conversation, a really big priority, right? And so
Mhm.
going into what was my relationship like,
Yeah.
as a child, I'm the oldest daughter. When it came to my relationship with my father, it was predominantly based on needs. Like,
Yeah.
what do you need from me right
Mhm.
now? How is school? Are you safe
Yeah.
at school? At
Mhm.
the time, he was trying to also focus on getting his practice off the ground. He was working
Okay.
6 days a week. And so, though it
Yeah.
was like an intentional conversation between us four of like, hey, like, leave dad alone, we
Yeah.
just his actions, it was like, wait, he's doing more important things. So we can't.
Yeah. What was his practice?
He's a CPA. And
Okay. Okay.
so he was a
Hmm.
CPA in
Yeah.
India, and then he needed to kind of get relicensed here, get
Yeah.
clients here, all of that,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
Um, and so that was kind of where my dad fit in. And then my mom and and I'm sure so many eldest daughters, especially South Asian daughters, can relate to this. I was kind of like her go-to person, right? Her
Yeah.
confidant in things
Hmm.
as like a 12-year-old,
Oh, yeah.
and
Yeah.
which like now that I'm a mom, I really can only just imagine the amount of stress and anxiety she was under that she
Hmm.
the need to share her fears, her doubts, her struggles with a
Yes.
child, her
Yeah.
loneliness with a child at the time.
Yeah.
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 And
That's tough.
so, yeah.
Hmm.
And I think at the time, you know, I don't think I was like I don't have like actual memories of like me being afraid or nervous. It was just like me just kind of taking in what she would say and just being a
Hmm.
good listener in that. And
Yeah.
even she was still working, right? She was
Hmm.
working and she was managing the household. And so
Wow. Yeah.
now I work and I manage the household
Hmm.
and I get to
Yeah.
choose my schedule and I'm not like,
Yeah.
working 40
Yeah.
hours a week by any means. We're
And
not living.
what was she doing?
She was a teller at a bank.
Okay.
And so
Yeah.
it was, just like a lot of like work. Like there was no
Yeah.
downtime by any
Yeah.
means.
And it wasn't something like maybe she would have chosen on her own, but it was like right in that generation, they just had to do what they had to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
For a little bit, she was at working at a
Hmm.
cleaner. For a little bit, she was at the bank, and the
Yeah.
bank was actually supposed to be like almost like a promotion in her life, right? But it's
Yeah.
still just like working 6 days a week for the mother,
Hmm.
right? And coming
Yeah.
home, cooking, cleaning, taking care
Wow.
of us. And so, when it came to my childhood, my parents were just consistently kind of worried about money, right?
Yes.
And I don't think I recognized any of that. I
Hmm.
didn't really hit like a comfortable, cushiony lifestyle until until I probably was in high school.
Yeah.
And, of course, at that time, I also was not aware of anything when it came to um, perhaps my brattiness with my parents as
Yeah.
a teenager, and kind of what I asked for because my parents tried really hard to give me and my brother everything that
Hmm.
we wanted in that
Yeah,
time.
yeah. And I feel like that's so common, right? With like the immigrant generation, with the kids that are growing up here and seeing what maybe their peers have and maybe wanting certain things, not realizing the struggles that our parents were really going through to assimilate and to make it here. Yeah.
Yeah, just like kind of jumping forward a little bit, I didn't know until post undergrad that my dad basically had to kind of go into debt and max out all his credit cards to pay for my lodging at my
Wow.
undergrad. And
Yeah. Oh,
I
wow.
I
Yeah, you
just
didn't,
didn't
yeah, you
know.
had no idea. They kept that. Yeah. From
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
Wow.
yeah.
And then when you transitioned to like thinking more about your career, how were your parents in terms of like the profession that you chose? You're a licensed professional counselor, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, um, it wasn't necessarily like a light bulb moment that I want to go into mental health by any means. It
Hmm.
was more of these like micro decisions and micro events that happened in my life that landed me in the mental health fields,
Yeah.
right? So, going back to when I was much younger, of course, subconsciously learning how to be an active listener and showing empathy to my mom when I was much
Yeah.
right? Like I didn't
Uh-huh.
know I was doing that.
Yeah.
When I was older in high school, I started to recognize that on both sides of my family, there was a lot of mental health struggles.
Hmm.
And with that, it wasn't like, oh, now I want to go into mental health. I actually went into undergrad just like many South Asians, assuming I'd go into the medical field.
Yeah.
And I took first bio class and I was like, no, like
Yes.
I know my strengths and this is not my strength.
Yeah. This is such a common thread throughout the episodes. I will tell you, med school and career and yeah.
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 And so then I had to do a little bit of soul searching and one thing I really liked was working with children. So I decided I wanted to
Okay.
go into education. And when
Hmm.
I brought that up to my dad, he was like, no, like we did
Yeah.
not come to this country so you could be a teacher. Like that is not okay. So,
So interesting.
um,
Yes, I got the same thing. So that's why it's so interesting for me. Yes.
yeah, so we had to have a ton of back and forth.
Hmm.
And finally, we came to this middle ground of I could pursue an undergrad in education as long as I got my master's. And
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
fine, sure, I'll figure that out later. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Yes.
I was a teacher for 6 years and in a Title I school. And that was kind of when I was like, okay, I need to go to grad school. What can I go to grad school for?
Hmm.
Education or like in grade school education, there's really only two ways you can kind of go up the ladder, either by going the mental health route and doing school counseling or
Yeah.
going admin and becoming a principal. I really didn't want to stay in the education field for
Hmm.
too long. And that was when I was like, wait, like I like helping and working with people. I
Yeah.
like listening to people. I like
Yeah.
providing insight. And so I decided to find a program that would take me to the private practice route. So I did school counseling for a couple of years. I went into the hospital system for a couple of years and then went into the private practice world.
Oh,
Um,
wow. Yeah.
and that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. Oh, great. Okay. So we're going to take a break. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about parental expectations and perfectionism and how that shows up in the lives of many South Asian families. Welcome back. You're listening to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita on Ruckus Avenue Radio. So I wanted to get into talking a little bit more about parental expectations and perfectionism. But before I do that, I just want to define parental expectations as being the hopes and desires that South Asian American parents have for their children. And then this idea of perfectionism, which shows up as this need to be perfect and to believe that perfection is possible. And because it's not possible, that often leads to this anxiousness or uncertainty about one's abilities, no matter what they do. So that's the type of perfectionism we'll be looking at today. It's called maladaptive perfectionism because it's, again, looking at this need for trying to be as perfect as you can, but then just not feeling like you're good enough. So, Sana, I'd just like to talk a little bit more about some of the values that you think South Asian American parents may have that lead to certain expectations for their children.
Yeah, of course. One, I want to acknowledge, I don't know if South Asian American parents, and not necessarily our generation, but our parents' generation,
Hmm.
even aware of these are my values. I don't,
Mm.
like
Uh-huh.
kind of like how you would do in therapy or in high school,
Yeah.
even a college class, where it's like you get a chance to sit down and reflect on what is important to me, what brings me joy, what brings
Oh,
me,
I love that distinction right there. That,
right?
yeah, it's
Like
what makes them happy and joyful. And yes, yes.
none of that reflection is like they weren't privileged enough
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
deep, right? Because it was
Hmm.
always like, especially immigrant culture, it's like, well, we just got to have enough money and we got to make sure
Yeah.
there's an opportunity for our kids, right? So that it was
Yeah.
the move. So with that in mind, if we were to kind of
Hmm.
come up with some values for them, I think one really big one is educational achievement, right? The
Yeah.
better you do in school, the
Hmm.
bigger opportunities you get, the more successful you'll be, right? And
Hmm. Yeah.
another one that kind of comes with that is upward mobility, right?
Yeah.
So going back to my own story, like one of the questions that my dad would ask me is like, okay, you're going to be a teacher and then what? Like, what's
Yeah.
next?
How,
Yeah.
yeah. And then how are you going to maintain your lifestyle and all of that?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Which then leads me to the next one, which was family reputation,
Yeah.
right? Like, what are
Hmm.
people going to think of us if we don't have upward mobility, if we don't get into grad school, if we aren't married by a certain age, right? So I think
Yeah.
those three, well, actually, I guess four, if you include upward mobility, I think are so fundamental with our parents'
Hmm.
generation where every decision that we make or that they made for us or for the family is
Yeah.
based off of, is this going to bring
Mhm.
financial success? And
Yeah.
is it going to look good to the community and to the family?
Yeah. That like all ties into that model minority stereotype in the US for South Asian Americans, being financially successful, making sure you look like that model good minority. and I'm looking good in the eyes of others. Absolutely. When you reflect back on messages maybe parents may have received in the past from their own parents, are there like comments or things that typically get made that could lead to this idea of perfectionism in children today?
Definitely, right? I feel like
Mhm.
our parents' generation, they really had it tough because, again, their parents didn't know any better
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
right? And so, one common thread that I see a lot in the clients that I work with and their parents is this almost this like conditional approval or conditional love,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'll
Yeah.
be proud of you when you go to med school. You're going to be I'm going to be so happy for you when you get
Yeah.
pregnant for the first time.
Yeah.
Or what you didn't get into you didn't get a job right out of
Hmm.
college. Like, what does that say? Right? Like try
Yeah.
hard, right? So it's
Yeah.
conditional. We don't get that safe space of like, hey, I love you for you, for
Yeah.
just for the fact that you are here and I love you. And they feel it. Again,
Yes.
people don't have the practice in
Hmm.
vocalizing and then also verbalizing. Right?
Definitely comes through, right, with the children, because you think about how there's all these like memes and things where a child comes home and they're like, I got a 96 on this. And their parents are like, well, what happened to the other 4 points? And so there's a lot of comparing. And I think a lot of it, again, comes back from just the way they were raised. And
Right.
then feeling like this is what they need to do, show this tough love, this tough face, right, to their children so that they will achieve to the highest levels that they can for, whatever you were saying, like the monetary values and the reputation and all those things, but maybe taking back those layers and thinking through like what do they want for their child first?
All our parents
Mhm.
want for us and
Yeah.
all their parents want for them is like happiness, good health, success, right? Or like
Yeah.
safety,
Yeah.
right?
Well, that
Like
unconditional love that you were saying, like loving them for who they are and knowing that their child knows, I mean, that their child knows that their parent loves them for who they are and not just like when they achieve these things.
exactly. And
Yeah.
with that, another trend that I find that our parents went through as well is the comparison piece, right? Hey,
Hmm.
your cousin is
Hmm.
already in America. Like, why are you not there yet? Right? Or
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
sister got into this program. Why haven't you? Right? And so we
Yeah.
hear that consistently. I know that was something that my parents really struggled
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
me and my brother, where they wouldn't realize it, but they would constantly be comparing he and I to one another. And we kind of had to be like, wait, you're doing it again. You're doing it again. And they really wouldn't, they think the
Hmm.
comparison piece should motivate
Yeah.
when instead it deflates,
Well, and
right?
I was just going to say that because I know about this stuff and I do it. And my kids have to tell me to stop, you know? So they're like, I'm like,
Hard.
I'm sorry, I think it's going to motivate you, but obviously it's not. And so that's basically what I say back is literally, I'm so sorry. And this is how I was raised and it's not motivating you. I understand now and I will stop. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so ingrained in us. And, that
Yeah.
helps us build empathy for our parents that, again, their
Yeah.
goal is not
Yeah.
to hurt us at
Yeah.
all. They just don't
No. Yeah.
otherwise.
Yeah. So you're like, I would love to learn a little bit more because of all the work you do with this perfectionism and just learn more about what does that mindset look like a perfectionist mindset with the clients that you work with.
Yeah, so earlier you talked about maladaptive perfectionism. So if it's okay with you, I would like
Yeah,
to kind of go over what adaptive perfectionism is.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah,
So
that's great.
adaptive perfectionism is the healthy perfectionism, right?
Uh-huh.
It helps us to have more drive. It helps us to have upward movement. It helps us
Hmm.
to want more in our life so we're not
Yeah.
stagnant, right? But
Yeah.
it comes with grace. It comes with compassion. It comes with
Hmm.
normalizing mistakes. Maladaptive perfectionism, which is kind of what we're talking about, is setting yourself up for failure, essentially, because you're setting yourself up to assume that you're going to reach this consistent state of flawlessness, right?
Yeah.
Unrealistic standards that we know in our core that we can't meet, right? So that
Mm.
could mean like anything from when we're a child that like we continually need to get hundreds on things, or we
Mhm.
always need to to be the popular kid, or we need to win all the games to we need to make sure our mom and dad are consistently talking about our achievements to when we're older, mom,
Yeah.
women in general, of I need to keep the household together and not ask for help. I need
Hmm.
to make sure that my husband and my kids are taken care of, and I'm able to do my job on my own, and I'm able to have a great social life without feeling burnt out, right? In
Yeah.
perfectionism, what I like to like remind my clients is perfectionism stems from insecurity, right? So
Hmm.
fear of abandonment, fear of failure, and fear of rejection.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so with
Yeah.
that, also like an internal pattern that I've noticed is actually
Uh-huh.
perfectionists tend to procrastinate a ton. And you would think that's
Yeah.
counterproductive, but
Uh-huh.
they procrastinate so much because of that fear of failure, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I don't do it, if I avoid it, then I haven't necessarily failed. I just haven't done it
Oh,
yet.
interesting. Okay.
One thing I like to kind of bring up in my sessions is this phrase called, it's just a phrase
Yeah.
that I came up with, is like the anticipation is worse than the task, right? So like
Uh-huh.
this podcast or a big meeting or
Hmm.
interview that you have, you're just spending so much energy anticipating it,
Yeah.
creating intimidation and daunt towards it.
Uh-huh.
But it's not as bad when you're actually doing the task,
That's
because
true.
now the energy is going towards completing the task. And as
Hmm.
we take those small steps of completing the task, we gain confidence. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I like to bring that up in session to kind of tell my clients, hey, the anticipation is going to feel worse than the actual task that when you start to achieve it.
Yeah. And then I guess like once they do the task, for perfectionists, do they still feel like they could have done better? Is that something that happens as well? Yeah.
Often. Yeah. I
Yeah.
was listening to a podcast the other day
Uh-huh.
about perfectionism, and they described it really well, where think about having a bucket, right? And anytime something good happens in your life, a drop of water goes into the bucket, right?
Yeah.
Where you had a good day with your baby, you cooked a new
Hmm.
meal and it turned
Yeah.
out good, you got an interview for a new job. But for perfectionists, it's almost like that bucket has a tiny little hole in it. And
Yeah.
so no matter what, the water
Uh-huh.
at the bottom of the bucket is going to continue to drip out. It's like, no, I could have done more, or
Yeah.
why didn't I try this? Or now that I did this well, do I have to do it again with to
Yeah.
better my expectations?
Yes, I totally see that because it's like you get this drop and you're like excited that it happened and you did it, but then you're like, wait, like now what? What should I do something else? Yeah. Can I do it again? Was that just like luck? You know?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
which comes to, another characteristic, which is difficulty delegating, right?
Mhm.
Convincing ourselves that we're the only ones that can do it the way we're supposed to, but also, what if we delegate and we
Yeah.
get judged for it? What does that say about
Yeah.
us that we need help?
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because you want to make it seem like you can do it all, and you cannot do it all. And so, yes, and those are kind of like when you think about what happens in the aftermath for perfectionists. Like, why is it bad? Like, what are the consequences, I guess, for perfectionism?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. One that kind of comes on the forefront of my mind is
Uh-huh.
burnout, right? Burnout
Yeah.
and overwhelm, because we're constantly, we haven't talked about people pleasing
Hmm.
yet, but people pleasing and perfectionism kind of go hand in
Oh,
hand. And
yeah.
so if we're
Okay.
continually serving others' needs, others'
Hmm.
wants, we're going to burn out so quickly, and then resentment's going to build, right? Annoyance is
Yeah.
going to build, frustration, which can then lead to resistance in relationship as well.
Yeah, yeah. And so going back to people pleasing and perfectionism, is it that because perfectionists want to look good and they're constantly seeking external validation, that's how it intersects with people pleasing? Is that part of it?
Yeah, part of
Okay.
it for sure, right? So this external validation piece, I kind of want to put like an asterisk next to it, because
Yeah.
you have to remember that everyone, like people pleasing is from my experience, people pleasing is part of the human experience, right?
Hmm.
We want to be liked, we want to build connection,
Yeah.
we want others to feel safe. The hope is
Hmm.
that we don't go to the extreme of only serving others' needs before ours consistently. That's when people
Okay.
become
Yeah.
an issue and a concern, right? When it leads to burnout, depression, anxiety,
Mm,
stress, loneliness. And
yeah.
it's not when we're just like, oh, you want to go get a coffee? Oh, where do you want to go? Oh, I think I want to go to Starbucks versus I want to go to Phil's. And it's like, let's just go to Starbucks. Like, that's totally fine, right?
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
fine. But if
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, I don't drink coffee
Hmm.
or I'm trying to
Yeah.
avoid the coffee shop for whatever reason,
Yeah.
like, oh, like, okay, fine. Instead of being
It-
like, actually, can we go to, I don't know, somewhere else? It's not
yeah.
right, like the
Yeah.
park or something, because I'm really trying to avoid caffeine.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That's a great way of looking at it. I'm going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit more about how to support children through healthy ways of striving to reach their fullest potential. Welcome back to Brownish Parenting with Dr. Amita. I wanted to start with just the early childhood years and thinking about parents, thinking through their hopes and dreams for their child, but also getting to know their child and trying to figure out who they are, what they like. Are there things that we need to keep in mind when we have children from an early age?
Yeah, I think this is something that we can I mean, I have a little baby. She's six
Yeah.
months old. And so this is something I'm constantly trying to probably am like a little hyper aware of because of the
Uh-huh.
field that I work in.
Yeah.
But one strategy to try is focusing on effort over outcome, right? So
Yeah.
celebrate that they tried something new, celebrate the hard
Mhm.
work, celebrate that they're in your life, right? Like when you're
Yeah.
starting from a little baby, like when a baby
Uh,
like looks at you, like smile back at them. When a
yeah.
toddler takes their step for the first time, clap for them, show them that
Uh-huh.
effort matters, hard work matters. Another one is modeling that healthy behavior for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
When they become a little bit older, like recognizing, oh man, I made a mistake. Ah, that was tough.
Yeah.
But you know what? I just learned from that because I learned X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Or, oh geez, I know I forgot to pick up something for camp that you needed. There was just
Mm-hmm.
so much in my mind. Thank you so much for reminding me. Let's go do it. Right. So normalizing
Yeah.
that our worth is not based off of perfectionism. Mistakes are a part of the human connection. And this all, like, kind of the big umbrella in all of this is
Mm-hmm.
the importance of open communication, which is what so many of us lacked from
Yeah.
parents,
Well,
right?
yeah, and as you were talking about it, I was just thinking about how many South Asian parents want to put on this face that they know everything, and they don't want their children to question them, and that everything that they say and do is right. And so that can be hard to then model, hey, I just made a mistake. But it's so important to do that so that they know that they can make mistakes and that they can learn from them and they can recover from them. And it's all part of the growth mindset, like you were talking about. So I think it is so, so important, but to also acknowledge that South Asian parents are going to have to, come forth and say sorry if they made a mistake or apologize or acknowledge that they can make mistakes and that they're humans, like you said, the human experience.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that will also help kids
Hmm.
learn what it means to build compassion and empathy for others, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Man, yeah, my mom kind of forgot to sign the permission slip, but she apologized. It happens, and I know that it wasn't on purpose. Versus
Yeah.
mom did forget, and mom ends up blaming you. Why
Hmm.
didn't you remind me for the fifth time, or why didn't you tell me? Then it's like,
That's
wait,
true.
what did I
Oh,
do? Right? Like I had
yeah.
already told mom that I needed the permission slip signed by Friday at 9
Hmm.
a.m. And then when going back to this idea of what are some ways that we can communicate expectation? I think a big
Yeah.
one, kind of like what I said, is to avoid criticism and blame, right? So
Yeah.
as soon as we point fingers, the other person's defense is going to go up, especially if it's a parent-child dynamic, right? Because
That's so
now
true.
it's a matter of who's in
Mhm.
control and who's going to win, right?
Yeah.
One strategy I really like to bring up in my sessions is this idea of intent versus delivery in
Hmm.
conversation, right? So
Hmm.
studies show that if delivery isn't where the recipient needs it to be, the intent kind of goes through the roof, right? Where
So
so if I'm not
true.
talking to you in
Hmm.
a tone that you feel safe, giving you eye
Hmm.
contact, body language, it does not matter what comes out of my mouth
Yeah.
to you. Right? Because
Yeah.
you're so focused on feeling unsafe in the situation that instead of listening and
Hmm.
understanding, you're going to automatically be on the defense and think about,
Hmm.
well, how can I protect myself in this situation? So same with,
Yeah.
South Asian parents, right? Intent versus delivery, really to keep delivery in mind. So
Uh-huh.
intent and messaging can be powerful in that conversation.
Yeah, that's such great insight. Because when I think about even when I look at images of authoritarian parenting versus authoritative, you see that
Mhm.
body language and you see the parent hovering over the child.
It's
And
scary.
yeah, yeah, versus authoritative where it's like eye to eye and the just even the body language, like, like coming closer to the child, putting their hand on their shoulder, talking to them in a warm tone. And so I think a lot of times, like I've also seen this where South Asian parents just feel like they want to be in that power and they want to be in that
Mhm.
dominant role. Feeling like they want to hold on to that power. It's almost very, very difficult to hand that power over to their children because they feel like maybe it's a loss of control for them
Yeah,
and
and
that
they're
they're hand
afraid,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And because they don't know what else to do, so they're going to yell.
Hmm.
Many times, majority of the times, the root cause of the emotion of anger is
Hmm.
fear, right? But
Yeah.
in order to show fear, you have to be a lot more vulnerable, right? I'm so scared that you're going to make the wrong decision. I'm so scared that you're not being safe. I'm so scared
Hmm.
that we're going to lose you. It's so difficult to show up like that versus like, what were you thinking when you made that decision? Why didn't
Yeah.
you think twice? Are you dumb, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
it's easier to show up with anger versus being more vulnerable with fear.
That's true. And that explains like a lot of South Asian dads as well, because, that it's really hard for them to show emotion, like you talked about, vulnerability and all of that. So they are, there's a lot of fear, but it shows up as anger. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, that's not because they are like truly mad at us.
Hmm.
They've never had the practice or the modeling from their own
Yeah,
parents,
that's true.
right?
Yeah.
And so now they come here into this brand new world, brand new culture.
Hmm.
And what do they seek? They seek control. They seek control because they're afraid of, did I make the right choice?
Yeah.
Are my children going to succeed? Like what do I do now? So all I can do is
Yeah.
just kind of hover, right?
Such a tough spot. Yeah. Such a tough space that they've been in, this whole time. Yeah. And we just talked about early childhood years. I wanted to move into the older childhood years, like school age, as well as adolescence and teens, because I know that's a challenging time period as they're trying to figure out who they are. Parents also have their own kind of wishes and expectations for their children. How do you find like a happy balance between the two?
Teenage years are tough. And I say that not because I have a teenager, but because I was a tough teenager.
Yeah, that's true. I was too, and I have a teenager, so.
The key strategy that I encourage teenage parents to kind of try is
Mhm.
open dialogue, right? Communication, communication, communication. And it looks different with teenagers because we want to really give them the respect
Yeah.
by sharing context with them and
Mhm.
sharing the why behind our decision making or our questioning in their decision making, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what's going on at school because you're behaving differently, right?
Hmm.
Usually
Hmm.
you would stay at school until 6 p.m. because you were part of tennis or you were part of football, and now you're coming home at 4. What's going on? Versus
Yeah.
like, hey, like you're not in school long enough. You need to get back into extracurriculars because that's going to affect your college resume, right? Like such
Yeah.
different intent and messaging and delivery,
That's so true. Yes. And there's
right?
so much going on during the teen years.
Right,
Yeah.
so much, right?
Yeah.
Which then leads to my next strategy of encouraging them to try to problem solve, right?
Hmm.
So creating that safe environment by allowing them to come up to us and share, this is what's going on, this is what I'm thinking, I need help, or
Yeah.
this is what, I don't need help, but I just want you to hear.
Yeah.
And us continuing to build confidence by pushing them to see if they can problem solve on their own, which will create autonomy, which will then create higher self-confidence.
Yes, and sets them up for then the college years when they have to make these decisions on their own and they feel confident in their abilities. Because, like you were saying, a lot of perfectionists like procrastinate. They don't want to make decisions. They're just like, I'm going to push it off. I'm going to push it off. So,
Right.
helping them from the very beginning to figure out, what do they want to do, and walking them through it and talking them through it.
Yeah, and one big one for perfectionists and people pleasers, especially those who don't realize that they've kind of gone on the deep end of it,
Yeah.
is reminding them and teaching them what boundaries are, right?
Okay.
So many perfectionists and people pleasers
Mhm.
continue to shift their boundaries because of fear of
Yeah.
abandonment, rejection, and failure, right? So
Yeah.
literally sitting down and talking
Uh-huh.
to them about this is why setting boundaries is important to us for in order for you to be able to advocate for yourself, in order for you to, going back to understanding our own values. And then
Yeah.
in sessions, we often like role play, right?
Hmm.
How do you set a boundary with a friend that consistently wants you to participate, I don't know, like in drinking, right? And like, I don't
Got
really
it.
want to drink, right? So how
Yeah.
do you say no? That's pretty like cliche for me to use that
No, but
example.
yeah, no, I was thinking like, yeah, when you were talking about boundaries, I was thinking of like, yeah, like maybe a teenager that's consistently saying yes to like every single social outing with their friends and then maybe not prioritizing their sleep or the other things that maybe they want to do, but, are procrastinating on. Is it like that too? Like,
Yes, and a
yeah.
really good way to ground ourselves and asking ourselves, are we participating is in people pleasing, is asking if our insides match our outsides, right?
Okay.
So what my gut and my internal like
Hmm.
self is wanting to do is that matching my actual actions.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a great way of looking at it. And a lot of children, that's where they need the help, is knowing what they need internally, right?
Right, because they don't
Yeah.
know, right?
They
Because
don't
like you
know.
said, so much is happening in the teenage, even college years, where we,
Yeah.
as humans, want to be accepted, want to be
Yeah.
loved, want to find connection. And so it's like, oh, well, this one thing doesn't matter. But those micro decisions really end up adding up.
Yeah. I wanted to also just find a little bit more about for a perfectionist child, usually they want to stick to the things that they already know. So are there ways to get them to try new things?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so one of the first things that, I'll share is starting small, right?
Uh-huh.
So if we want to participate, if we want them to participate in a team sport, right? So
Yeah.
say soccer, right?
Hmm.
Let's play soccer at home. Let's go buy a soccer ball together.
Yeah.
Let's watch a movie that's about soccer. Let's
Oh
watch
yeah.
soccer games together.
Okay.
Let's go to them. Let's watch
Yeah.
them on TV. And then let's practice at home. Let's practice in a park.
Yeah.
As we build confidence, let's join a team. Or
Ah,
if we have to kind of
yeah.
join a team
Uh-huh.
first because of timeline, let's
Hmm.
do both together.
Okay, yeah. So they need like a little bit of a warm-up period.
Exactly. I mean, same
Yeah.
with us, right? If like
Yeah.
all of
I
a
like
sudden
that.
I was like, hey, you need to go join like your community basketball team, you'd be like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
and with that comes the importance of creating a safe environment at home, right? Of like,
Yeah.
it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to take risks. It's okay to it's okay to do something that you don't really want to do, but you're going to try. And
Yeah.
the goal here is just to try. And you can talk to me about how you're feeling.
So knowing that, you're trying this out, it's okay if you don't want to continue, but you're trying it for the first time. You may not love it, you may love it. A lot of times, maybe children just feel a lot of pressure that, okay, I'm doing this, and now my parents want me to do it
Succeed.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, successfully for the whole year. They're going to be really disappointed if I stop in the middle. But letting them know, like, this is just a process, like trial and error, and you're figuring things out, like what you like, what you don't like. Yeah,
Right.
that's great.
Yeah. Another idea is to, when possible, involve them in the decision making, right?
Hmm.
Okay, I really want you to get out there this summer. We have to, we can't kind of be at home all
Yeah.
day. Would you rather go to this camp or this camp? Or,
Yeah.
hey, we're going to go on a vacation. Would you rather go here or
Hmm.
here? Of course, you kind of have to do
Yeah.
the prep work depending on, what the options are. The more you involve them in the decision making, that will allow them to learn more about their
Hmm.
likes, dislikes that will allow them to
Yeah.
learn how it is to use your own voice as well.
And they can also like reflect back on it. Like, was that a good decision? Did
Yeah.
I like that? And what would I have done differently next time? And so I love that. It really builds that self-efficacy. All right, we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to end with some final insights from Sana. Welcome back. We are at the end here with Sana. And I wanted to end with asking Sana a little bit about if parents have been critical in the past with their children may have a higher inner critic and they may be afraid to make mistakes. So, how can they start that conversation now and reframe that conversation with their children?
Yeah, such a good question.
Mhm.
I think firstly, they can start by acknowledging their past behaviors, right? Hey,
Yeah.
I realized that I've been critical or even aggressive in my with my tone in the past, and I'm so sorry that I made you
Yeah.
feel that way, that you were afraid to approach me. I want things to change, and I want
Hmm.
us both to feel emotionally and physically safe with one another. And I'm so sorry, but I'm
Yeah.
trying. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like that
Yeah.
conversation can be so powerful, right? Can you imagine our parents
No.
in the past when my parents have apologized to me, I know
Hmm.
I'm like, oh my gosh, like you
Yeah.
apologized,
Yeah. It's a game changer.
Definitely. Again, it helps with building empathy,
Yeah.
compassion. It helps with creating that safe space. It helps us normalize that
Yes.
mistakes happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
So
that
important.
Yeah, and the other one that I would say is shifting the focus then, right? Okay, now
Hmm.
we've acknowledged that something needs to change. What
Yeah.
needs to change? We need to change the focus to what's going well, right? So
Yeah.
thank you so much for putting yourself out there and trying this new dish. I know you don't like
Yeah.
chicken, but
Yeah.
here, that meant so much to me. Instead of
Yeah.
saying in the past, you would say, "Hey, I cooked this chicken for you. I was in the kitchen for a couple of hours. You didn't even appreciate me. Like, what's going on? Just eat your food, right?"
Yeah.
Same messaging, different delivery. And so
Hmm.
really shifting the focus on this idea of progress over perfection, right? This idea of growth matters, not just goals that are achieved.
Yeah, like that end outcome to shift our mindset to be able to do that. Because I'm just thinking through that for myself. And sometimes
Yeah,
like I said, like it's these patterns that are ingrained in us. Like sometimes I'll say something that makes them feel like, oh, like that, you didn't fold the laundry correctly, or that's how you did the shirts, or, instead of like really thinking through
the effort.
that progress that they're able to make.
Yeah, and that kind of leads to
Mhm.
another strategy of using compassionate language, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, our delivery matters so much, right?
Yes.
Instead of saying you should have done better, right?
Uh-huh.
It could be switched to you tried so hard, and I appreciate that so much. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, that's great. And then, what other issues are you seeing with South Asian American families today?
Yeah, so if it's okay with you, I kind
Uh-huh.
of want to answer the question a little differently in like what is a pattern that I'm
Yeah.
seeing more and more. And
Okay.
it goes back to what I said earlier of South Asian parents, and this kind of goes with our generation too,
Hmm.
like us not knowing our values, us
Hmm.
going back to what our parents' values were, and a
Yeah.
lot of times those values are misaligned,
Hmm.
right? One, like our values don't have to match our parents' values, just like how
Yeah.
your kids' values may not match your values,
Hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things we can do is if you Google like top 100 values, right? And these words will show up, right? Like
Yeah.
family, religion, food,
Uh,
humor, travel, right?
yeah.
Like define what your top five values are, and that
Uh-huh.
will really allow you to better understand what you want out of your life, how you
Yeah.
want to raise your children. So I
Yeah.
think that, one answer to that question is us not knowing what we want,
That's
us
true.
continuing to lean on and turn to community expectations and
Hmm.
fear of rejection and abandonment
Yeah.
to let that lead into how we are parenting our children.
That is so important. Yeah, because we do this in our family. We have family meetings, but before we did that, we actually did what you were saying. We got out the list of values
Yeah.
and we looked through them and we each picked a few and talked through them and why we felt like this was about like, related to our family. And one is like experiences over things and really prioritizing that or being environmentally friendly. And so then like what happens is you can kind of make your decisions based on that. So you're
Work
not also
backwards. Yeah.
yeah, right? So you're like, okay, well, we don't have those things, but remember we value experiences over the things. And so we can constantly remind ourselves or okay, we need to get the stainless steel straws because we want to be environmentally friendly or we want to have more empathy and compassion. So let's host National Night Out at our house because then every all the neighbors can come and get to know one another, the ones that don't know anyone. So, there's things that we can do because we have been able to sit through and think through the values. And I love that you said that they don't have to be the same as
They
our
don't.
parents'
They
values.
won't be,
Yeah.
right? It would be strange if they were exactly the same. We've lived such different experiences, you know.
Hmm.
Hopefully, we're more privileged than our parents were because we're not having to go to a completely different country like our
Yeah.
parents do.
Yeah. So we have the time to think through what we want for that next generation. That's awesome. All right, let's conclude by just finding out how listeners can stay in touch with you if they want to continue this conversation.
Yeah, I have an Instagram that
Uh-huh.
you guys can kind of find me at. It's just Balanced Minds Therapy.
Yeah.
Um, and you'll see my face there, or you can, Google Sanah Kotadia, but Balanced Minds Therapy is probably easier to remember.
Yes, and you have a lot of fun content. So I will say that I love all the stuff you put out there. My favorite one right now is the 7 superpowers of moms and all the things that they have to do. So definitely check her out. And I want to thank you so much for our conversation. You've given us so much to think about, to reflect on, and like tools just to move forward with what we want to do in our families and the values we want to live by.
No, thank you. This was so fun. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.